All right, good morning to you, everybody. Mark Sudduth here. I got CJ Morgan with me in an undisclosed location, as I was joking with him earlier. Now, he's down in Venice, Florida. CJ's my severe weather expert on the staff, so to speak. I'm the hurricane guy. I know a little bit about severe weather, but we know a lot about communication, and that's one of the things we want to do is make sure that we effectively communicate what to expect and what severe weather means in this situation is not just about the threat of tornadoes, although the tornado outbreak that could happen tomorrow is certainly substantial. Um, so let me start off. I want to share my screen and address, I think, something I believe is really important. Look at the Weather Service homepage. I got to unshare my screen because I got to get my telestrator back up. Sorry about that. Come on. There we are. Now we can do it right. Um, so Weather Service homepage here, get everything right. Notice all the pink and brown through the nation's midsection. This is the first part of this severe weather. Remember, severe weather is not just thunderstorms, hail, tornadoes, and flooding. It is also the fire weather side of this. And this is very, very substantial coming up here for parts of the plains. If we go over to the Storm Prediction Center, the high risk, the moderate risk, all that for some thunderstorms gets a lot of attention, but we don't pay attention as much, I think, unfortunately, because I don't know, there's just something about it. I mean, fire is pretty spectacular to me. I don't know why people don't pay as much attention to it and why the chasers don't line up out here for this, but story for another day, I guess, just human nature. But this is a real, real danger right here. When you see the extreme in there, that is the fire weather problem because the humidity values are going to be very low. The wind is going to be very high. The fuel load out here is substantial I mean, it's the plains. Come on. CJ, you and I have driven out there a lot. We know how it
Yep.
is. And anything from throwing the cigarettes out the window to a errant barbecue that flips over, whatever, and then even chains on vehicles that create sparks. The under part of your vehicle, you might pull over and the under part of your vehicle is hot or something, it catches something on fire. There's a lot of ways. Then right up here, I had to ask CJ, what does that mean? ISO DRYT, and that's those dry thunderstorms. I think of dry thunderstorms as high base thunderstorms out in the west, where you get truly dry thunderstorms. You get the lightning without the rain. Well, that could be a problem in this area here that the Storm Prediction Center has outlined in southeast Kansas, southwest Missouri, an extreme corner there, the extreme northwest corner, an extreme corner. How about that? Northwest corner of Arkansas and northeast Oklahoma. Bottom line, the fire danger is definitely high. So please take this seriously as well. All right. So with that, CJ, let me turn it over to you and we'll start talking about the severe thunderstorm side of this. And if you want to share your screen or if
Absolutely.
you need me to pull anything up off of SPC, I certainly can.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull up the current outlook for today.
There we go.
So, yep. So as everybody knows, and at least those of you that are tuning in, if you haven't heard, so over the next couple of days, we can expect a pretty widespread outbreak of severe weather. Now, what do I mean by that? One of the great things on the Storm Prediction Center site is they also, in addition to their categories, which we're going to kind of ignore for right now, they have the various threats up there on the left. You can hover over and see what the probabilities are. I actually really like this graphic. I wish they would show it more often. For the tornado threat today, you're looking at this and saying, well, what does this mean? What this is telling you is what your given probability is of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of any point on the map. So you can pick out where you live. So say I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and there's the cities one is pretty good.
Yep.
So say you have St. Louis, Missouri there. So you have a 15% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of St. Louis today.
Yeah, that's
So
substantial
it's,
compared to
yeah,
every other day of the week.
yeah. And I mean, as you can see, t tornadoes in themselves are rare. So when you have an elevated risk like that, it's something we want to take seriously. And that little hatched area where they have the little dashed lines, that's a probability for significant tornadoes. And I believe on this one, yeah, they are saying a 10% or greater probability of an EF2 to EF5 tornado. Today's biggest risk, I think, is going to be wind driven. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, there's a 45% significant risk, and that means wind gusts of 65 knots or greater within 25 miles of a point. I believe that's what, 70, 80 miles an hour,
Yeah, I mean
if
that's
my
hurricane,
mathing is correct. And
hurricane
that's not,
straight
sorry, go
line
ahead.
burst. Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah, it's
discount this. We're not. It's not a derecho, but
no.
get these winds in here. We'll look at the modeling in a minute, show what it's going to look
Yep,
like. We're fascinated, I guess, and fixated on the tornadoes, just like with hurricanes. It's all about the category and the wind speed, but we ignore things like the rain.
yep,
And same thing with severe weather. You got to look at the big picture. What are the
exactly.
be? Not, hey, how many tornadoes are there going to be and where are they going to happen? Well, A, we
Right,
don't know. So we got to focus on the bigger picture. And so that's
correct.
part of what we're doing here.
And that's one of the things that we're going to be really focused on today, is that wind threat. There is a threat for large hail as well as some tornadoes. And but today that wind threat's going to definitely win out as these lines kind of organize later on today into earlier or later on this afternoon. And that's going to be pretty much over eastern Missouri is where that's going to start, and it's going to overspread into portions of Mississippi and, excuse me, Western Tennessee. So up here is the HRRR, that's the high resolution refresh model. All that means for you is that it is, it gives us a greater detail. So that way we can see what is potentially going to happen over the next few hours. So we're starting this off. Is this the most recent run? Yeah, this is the 11Z. So looking at, and I thank you to Levi for putting actual times there where it has your local time. So that would be, so those times are going to be in Eastern time because Mark and I are in Eastern. So just
Right.
kick it back an hour. So
Yep.
this is looking tonight at 7 o'clock p.m. So
Yep.
as you can see that line, very, wow, look at that pressure, 974 at the surface.
Right
That is
over Nebraska.
insane.
Right.
That is insane. So all of that wind is going to be moving
Yeah, like
up
this.
into the system like that. And that's that line of thunderstorms that's going to begin over Iowa and Missouri. And that's going to march off to the east. So for those of you in Illinois and Wisconsin and even into portions of Kentucky and Indiana, this is going to be a line of very severe thunderstorms with potentially 80-mile-an-hour winds and embedded tornadoes. There could be embedded supercells within this line,
Right.
which is what I think we're seeing as that day goes along. Um, and then I also don't want to discount to the south, things that we could see there. Um, if you want to bring up the southeast, we could have tornadoes today in Mississippi, in Tennessee, and Northwest Alabama.
All right, let's go back to the SPC. Look, the
Yep.
enhanced. Don't, again, we look at the red, like ignore this just for a minute. Pay attention down here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's broad. This is a big system. And let me just go back to the eastern US. This shows it. There we
Hmm.
go.
That's
So
much better.
cyclone or mid-latitude cyclone gets going. And then look, this is 7 p.m. Central Time. You do
Hmm.
have some stuff out here, and these are separate. These are discrete already, a
Yep.
few. And then you've got a few discrete cells up here, and then more linear. Yeah, I mean, this is a really, really big deal. And then on the backside, look at these isobars packed in here. This is where your
It's
fire
a
weather
lot of wind.
potential. Yep, a big old wind bag. Let's look at the precip moisture. Let's see. This isn't as, what am I looking for? I want to try to show the humidity, but it doesn't look like it's, oh,
You're
it's
gonna
not.
want into thermodynamics, I think.
So
Oh,
here's,
maybe not.
I forgot that the GFS is where you get all those parameters, but
No, you
that's
can get them on the her. Here, I can pull it up. Um,
share your screen, or
yeah, I'll go ahead. So
let me
I
know if you
will
need
share.
permission or something. There you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's gonna ask for permission.
Well, let CJ take over from his Macintosh.
Yes. All right, 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Rome. All right. So I'm going to bring up, this is the HRRR. We were looking at the 11 and 11. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and zoom out. Sorry, guys. We'll do it over the central US. How's that? Do you want the dew point or do you want actual relative humidity?
Let's look at the dew point. I think that'll be interesting because obviously the high, look at that. Look at those green.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we're not, let's see what time this is 12Z. So these are the initial times.
Yep. This is initialization. So let's go ahead and take this out into the future. Here is, let's stop it at 0.
Yep. So 7 o'clock
So
Eastern
this is
time.
7 o'clock. Yep.
Yeah. So your 60-degree dew point's working into Arkansas and even higher down in Louisiana.
Yeah, look at this 70 F dew points. But I want to point out really quickly for everybody looking in on this, just look at all of these 17, like dew points into the teens, Mark. That's where that fire weather is coming from. Look, even
Absolutely.
single digits down here in Texas and New
Yeah.
Mexico for
Dry,
dew points. That is
crackly.
desert.
Yes, and that is a really big danger. This is a big time storm, more than just the tornado threat. That's what I wanted to make sure we did not leave out our friends in the southern plains for the fire threat here and just the wind damage possibility and different interstates that go through there. Truckers, you got to be careful. Trucking companies, put the word out. Tell them, look, just pull into the Loves. I don't think they got a lot of Bucky's out there yet, but take it easy, okay? We need you to be safe to get your goods and whatnot across the country. RVers, you know, when you get hit sideways by 50, 60 mile an hour wind on a high profile vehicle, it is a big problem.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead really quickly and I'm going to bring up. So I had somebody that asked, what is, why are discrete cells a threat? So the biggest thing that we're looking at when we're looking at a discrete thunderstorm, kind of like what you got going on down here. And again, this is what, 6 o'clock Central Time tonight? You have these storms that are kind of out ahead of this main line here. And what those can do is there's not, they have an untapped atmosphere to work with all out in here. And the reason why they are more dangerous than, say, these up here, not to say that they're not dangerous, is because all of these cells, each one of them is influencing the
Yeah,
atmosphere around it. So if you have a storm that has, it's not really fighting for resources,
actually,
let's say,
the
you
inflow,
know,
what we've really
right.
learned is important. And sorry to literally
No,
steal
it's
you,
okay.
Jay, but and we've seen this out in the field. That's why it's
Hmm.
so that we go out and we see these things in person. When they are discrete supercells, they can have that unimpeded or much less impeded inflow. And just like a hurricane, you got to get that air to come in at the surface and then rise and get out unimpeded in a hurricane. With these systems, they're very small, obviously. We're talking mesoscale down to county size, whatever, for these supercells.
Right,
They've got to be able to get that air in without competing. And if they're all in a line, everybody's competing, like you said. It's like hogs fighting over food in a feed trough. The one
right.
fat hog that has it all, he gets fatter. Same thing with these supercells. So when they are discrete like that, they have the atmosphere and the what is it, the kinematics, I guess, all to
Yep.
themselves.
So up on screen, I have currently, this is a what we call a model sounding, and I'm not going to get too into the weeds, but there's a couple of things here that I kind of want to point out for the general public. What this is here on the right,
By the
this is
way,
called
these
a
are things
hodograph.
that you can learn yourself too, folks. This is what I like about
Hmm.
this. Teaching you how to read these yourself just to know enough. The CJ does a good
Exactly.
job of explaining it.
So here's the hodograph. What this does is this is a visual representation of your winds. So you want to think of each of the axes as your cardinal direction. So here's north, here's south, here's, oh God, let me use text instead. because my handwriting on this is absolutely terrible. So here's your north, your south, your west, and your east. Okay. So each of these axes is a specific cardinal direction. And
You're
what this is doing is this is taking each of these little dots is a radiosonde that we send up with with a weather balloon and a position at each time it takes it. So these are the kilometers, the distance into the atmosphere in kilometers. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, that we're taking samples of the winds. So this is a literal representation. If you look straight up into the column of air above you, and north is at the top, south is at the bottom, east is to the right, west is to the left, how the winds are actually what directions they are blowing up in the atmosphere, as well as the speed. The closer that those little things there are together, like you see here with the 4 and 5, that means that the winds aren't going too much. And you can kind of go up here in this is a visual representation of what we call wind shear, right? So this tells us what our winds up in the atmosphere are doing. Did I get that
Wind shear is
pretty
the
down?
change
Yeah,
of wind direction with height. And for hurricanes, wind shear is detrimental. For
right,
severe weather, wind shear is favorable. It's like scissors that you got your flow coming in one way and then another way, and then you pop
right.
your storm through it vertically and you help to turn it, and that gives you your supercell.
Right. So what we're seeing, so this is a model sounding. So that's just saying this is what the model is actually forecasting for us. This is 0Z today. And that would be somewhere near Memphis is where I took this.
Right.
And you can see down here, the model actually tells you what your possible hazards could be. So this is saying the conditions are
Favorable.
there for tornadoes. So this is today. But what I really want to point out again is this. So see how this line loops kind of to your right? It
Yeah, you
turns.
turning. It's
That's
telling.
your wind, that's your wind shear. And you can
Right.
see that here's your wind,
Right.
your wind barbs. You can actually see, visualize the winds as they turn up there in the atmosphere. And what I want to kind of look down here, we talk about CAPE, Mark, all the time in the severe weather community. Well, here's our CAPE values today. You're looking at almost, you know, 1100, 1600, 10 or 1000 plus at the surface. That's not nothing.
Right.
And what this tells us is that there is instability. So that tells us, the thunderstorms can exist, they will exist. And our shear values here are off the charts. They're pretty high for something of a, what they're saying only an enhanced risk. All of this is to say the conditions are there today in Memphis, according to this model. This is one run of one model for the potential for tornadoes. So this is, you know, th- we are going to be seeing a lot of this over the next couple of days.
Yep.
Um, as this event kind of unfolds. And I know there's a lot of, and we'll get to tomorrow here in a second. Um, for good reason, there's a lot of focus on tomorrow, but I don't want to discount the possibility for dangerous weather today, especially over portions of Missouri, western Tennessee, northern Mississippi, even.
This goes
And
into
what
the
this is,
nighttime.
look at this, I'm just pushing the her out here. Look at this down here.
Yeah. And this is
That's a
it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that, 2 a.m.
and that's that's a big deal down here in the southeast. So what we call Dixie Alley, you guys are going to hear a lot of over the next couple of days. There's like a second little tornado alley that kind of exists in this area down to the Gulf Coast and up. We call
Right.
this Dixie Alley because it's in the middle of the southeast. A lot of our tornadoes down here happen at night. And those conditions, because we're so close to the Gulf, will still exist in well into the overnight hours, as evidenced here by these, what they look to be, what the model is essentially showing as supercells over Mississippi tonight. So
Yeah.
this isn't going, there's going to be multiple waves to this system, and people need to really be alert tonight into tomorrow and have a way to get warnings.
Yep. And we're going to talk about that as we wrap up later on. Um, so let me get
Hmm.
back to my side and we'll share yours again in a little bit, CJ.
Yep.
Um, think where I wanted to go with this. So again, today, the main thing two aspects to this. I'm really worried about, and look at this. You can just see, it's dry when there's no there's no thunderstorm threat there. There's no convective outlook. That's your dry,
Right.
low humidity area, and that is very, very concerning. Those brush fires can get out of control, so be careful of
Yep.
that. Um, so that covers today, and then of course tomorrow has a more dangerous look to it because of the nature to the setup.
Right.
And, this is where a lot of attention is going to be paid, and rightfully so. The tornado threat, substantial. I think this is going to go up as more data comes in. That's how this works. It's just like sports. Stuff
Yep.
gets adjusted. Coaches make adjustments as the game goes on. Yesterday is a great example of that. And I'll just be real quick about this. Two players for Duke got injured and they made adjustments and they were still able to win over Georgia Tech. They didn't just give up and that's it. Coaches make adjustments. There,
Right.
who my allegiance lies with, the Blue Devils. But the same thing. This is why it's news, sports, and weather on TV, really, because they are related. And I'm serious about this. There are adjustments that get made because more data comes in and we get closer to the time of stuff happening. It just makes logical sense. So I'm certain this is going to go up. We're going to start seeing probably some 30s in here sometime later.
I
And
would agree.
the chance that this goes to high risk is certainly there. But again, that's not important. What's important is there are going to be tornadoes tomorrow of a substantial nature in the deep south down here. And
Correct.
we need to be ready for that. All right. The wind threat, same kind of deal. Straight line winds, your downbursts. I'll just do a quick drawing. You have your thunderstorm, and it's deep into the atmosphere, real tall. We'll call this 60,000 feet or something like that. And you got your hail and everything happening, and the rain and everything, and that falls down the rain cooled air. And you got your ground down here. What is the air going to do? It's going to spread out laterally. That's your downburst. And that could be 3, 4, 5 seconds, 10 seconds long. And you get a big area of 80, 90, 100 mile an hour winds that last for a few seconds, mimics a tornado, but those aren't tornadoes. So that's why this huge wind threat is in here, and that is substantial. And then the hail threat as well, um, pretty high tomorrow, especially considering the deep south. And you're talking some pretty big cities in here in the I-20, I-10 corridors.
Hmm.
So get your car ready to get inside a garage, whatever. There could be some large hail. All right. So for tomorrow, how do you want to approach this, CJ? What do you? I mean, let me show you a couple things, then we'll turn it back over to CJ. We'll get to this in a minute from Span, obviously a legend, a living true legend. But other people talking about it. My friend Dylan Federico is over in Dallas. Um, I mean, this is a big, big deal, the communication side of this. And then people are starting to post the models. There's debate about that from hurricane models to winter storms to this kind of stuff that there's no context. But I don't know. I think sometimes it's good because it gets people's attention. Um, and that's a whole other debate, the psychology of it. But it is concerning, worrisome, whatever, because we're looking at the modeling literally printing out supercells down in Mississippi. So, CJ, what do you think? Where do you want to go from here about
Well, let's
tomorrow?
go ahead and start with the SPC because reading this day two risk or day two, and for those of you that want to go on, you can go on to the Storm Prediction Center website. You can read this for yourself. The main part I want to focus on is the paragraph before it goes into the Ohio Valley and Lower Great Lakes. I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds because a lot of this is, the actual weather, the meteorological terms. But I want to break this down to, so that way everybody can understand it. Because this is some of the more strong worded that this is probably one of the strongest worded SPC risks that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And the takeaway here is that you talk about these forecast soundings across parts of central and southern Mississippi. And remember, CAPE is how much potential energy is in the atmosphere. So that's our number to say, think of it as a powder keg, right? If you're lighting a match, You have to have a certain value in order to get that growth, that, those thunderstorms to go up. And then you also need the wind shear. So those are the values that we pay attention to, and there's some lapse rates things in there. This is a higher end level setup. I mean, we're talking 2,000 to 3,500 of Cape. I mean, this is, this is stuff that I've seen out on the plains. This isn't very typical for the Southeast. We get a lot of what we call low
especially in
Cape, high shear environments. But, you know, uh, I want people to understand the atmosphere tomorrow is going to be primed for severe weather and especially tornadoes. And I really want to focus in on that sentence after it talks about the low level jet. The Storm Prediction Center, the forecaster here is saying multiple long tracked high end tornadoes will be possible. Um,
model is
and
seeing
that's really
right. We'll
the
show that.
takeaway.
Yeah.
And that's, that's what I want people to understand is that, tomorrow's a Saturday. People are going to be out, they're going to be watching, sports games, they're going to be going to their, their kids' sports competitions or events.
Birthday
You want to
parties,
make sure, yeah,
picnic.
exactly. You want to make sure that you have a way to receive warnings because, and Mark, we can kind of turn to the modeling because you and I talked about this earlier. This isn't going to be a 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Like we're going to see storm development earlier in the afternoon. So you may be going, to a Saturday church service, or um, if you observe your Sabbath day on a Saturday, you could be at religious services. You could be doing many different things tomorrow around that time.
Yep, lots
And
going on.
yeah, so this is really not a great scenario. And you're not going to see these things coming. You won't see them until they're right on top of you. This
Right.
isn't going to be,
I'm gonna show you an example of that before we wrap up
yeah,
too. But CJ's right. I mean, we got a lot going on. We're busy people. So this is 1 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. That is what that 18Z means, Zulu time. And so 1 p.m. Central Time. And I want you to watch right through here
that's 18Z today, Mark.
today. Sorry. 28 hours out, so we're not quite there. We gotta keep ad lib.
Go back to the 10Z run, please. So we'll just make sure that, so that's, go to 0 or 6. 6
Yeah.
would be the most recent long form. Okay.
18Z is still 1 p.m. I just had the wrong day.
Yeah.
But what I want you to do is look through this area right here as we get to tomorrow. So let's get through today. You'll see today's activity. We already talked about that. And then we get into tomorrow. So there's your 1 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. And you can even see in this version, this is the tidbits, tropical tidbits version. Look at that. You can see the curved nature to these storms. These are discrete supercells in here. They're by themselves. And that matches up exactly to what was said right here. Multiple long track high end tornadoes will be possible. There they are in the modeling. I mean, look at that one right there, CJ. That one's literally,
Oh,
oh, yeah,
wait.
let me click on it. Let's look at the sounding.
Wow.
I mean, you can see the curvature. There
And
it is.
there's your Cape values.
Right.
Wow, look at the sheer 83 knots. I mean, this is ridiculous. Now, there is on the left-hand side, you can see convective contamination. But either way, I mean, the point is the atmosphere tomorrow is going to be primed for severe weather. And look, you can see each of those look at the little supercells. Go back one. Look at
Yep.
the supercells over south central Mississippi and uh,
Yeah.
southeastern Louisiana. I mean, these, and I also want to point out that that cluster that goes up into Middle Tennessee is still going to have embedded supercells.
Right.
This isn't going to be, a day that you want to be out there messing around with these, especially those of you that live in the deep south. We have terrain issues, we have tree issues, and there's going to be so much moisture in the atmosphere that we're going to have very high precipitation supercells. You're not going to see these.
So just to give you an idea of that, because this is extremely important. So what are we talking about? So the modeling is showing that those cells would be coming across this part of Mississippi and into Alabama, eventually even coming out of Louisiana. So let's pay attention to some stuff. You got I-20, and that's a big corridor. and
Hmm.
you've got 59. You have 55 that's north-south, and in between, big cities, Jackson, Meridian, Starkville, home of Mississippi State, up here.
Hmm.
Not a lot of population, which is good, but that doesn't mean zero. Look at this. You start drilling down, and now you really start to see how things fill in. Small little cities all across this area, little towns, and not a lot of ways if you're chasing to get around. I mean, we'll address that too. Uh,
Yeah.
but this is one of those deals where, and now I'm going to go to the James Spann thing. You can be a hero because if you are a weather geek, a weather nerd, you're into this stuff, you're the one at the water cooler at work that everybody asks, or people texting you, hey man, what do you think about this? We all know people like that. I'm one of them. CJ's one of them. We are
Hmm.
proud wearers of the cape there, right?
Right.
So James says, James Spann, for those of you that really pay attention to the weather, you watch it daily, you can really help us on days like this. If you're a weather dweeb, geek, nerd, dork, or weenie, thanks for your service. All right. So all kinds of stuff that you can do to help people get the word out. All right. Find people, that might not be paying attention for whatever reason. Get in touch with them. I don't know. I mean, like call them. Some of these people, they're going to literally have a phone in their house. There are people that are not
Hmm.
into the weather like we are, and they have a smartphone, and they
And I
might not
do also want
know
to point
on the
out,
radio.
right, and I want to point out that was one of the biggest issues we had during the super outbreak of 2011. Somebody had mentioned this reminds them of 2011. We're going to have that morning round or overnight round. There's a possibility that people are already going to be without power.
Right.
So they may not be able to get a warning.
Yikes.
And that's a problem in and of itself. Um, Mark, go ahead and bring up the anomalies again, the sea surface anomalies
Well, that's a
that
perfect
you just had
segue.
up.
Is look at all this,
Hmm.
and a big part of it is how warm.
Wow, look at the loop current.
Yep. Luckily,
Wow.
this has stayed cool relative to average as of late, but this is, I mean, just look at the legend down here, 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above the long-term average, and that is a lot of additional heat energy, latent heat. Forget the hurricanes for now. That's not even,
Hmm.
the Gulf will always be warm enough for hurricanes, except 2010.
Right.
I mean, it was still warm. That was a weird year. But that's a lot of extra moisture. And then your low is going to be sitting up here, the front dragging south, and the big southeast ridge. It pumps. I talk about this on my videos all the time. That's the
Hmm.
setup. And, you know,
It's the
that's
reason
somebody.
why the US is the most tornado-prone country in the world. We have the Gulf of Mexico.
But I wonder,
And
like, I wonder if, because this is 2 to 3 degrees warmer, so that is more energy, more moisture. I wonder, this is really getting into the weeds, I'm sure, but like,
right.
it's only March 13, 14 that this is going to happen,
Mhm.
15. Um, I wonder if this is climatologically ahead of schedule down here, and if you could blame that on this. That's a story for another. We could ask like Cameron Nixon or somebody. But like April 27th, 2011 is when we saw the terrible outbreak through here. April 16th was over here that year.
Yep.
That's a month from now.
Yep.
This is mid-March, and I wonder if this is the culprit. But anyway, I get fixated on those
There
things, but it
Yep,
just
it's definitely something that the greater severe weather community is looking into. There's been a lot of research as of lately done on the Gulf and its influence on severe weather in the United States. And there are correlations, but I know there's more research that needs to be done. So again, focusing in on tomorrow, I really want to focus in on that I-20, that 5920 corridor from Birmingham down to Meridian and Jackson. That's where the focus is going to be, I think. It's going to be south of I-20, north of I-12, and really in that area, stretching from, it's the core of what we call Dixie Alley.
yeah,
That's what a lot of these forecasts are pointing to. And remember, anything that fires over Mississippi is going to all of these storms are going to be moving northeast. They're going to go into Alabama and they're going to be approaching the Birmingham metropolitan area in Montgomery and Huntsville at night, in the evening, going into overnight hours, and then pushing off as a mesoscale system into Georgia. So this is going to be a long day tomorrow, and I want people to be, aware.
This is what they're probably going to look like too. This is great when you can show this kind of stuff. This is from our friend Max Olson. I mean, he literally posted this. Point of view, your drone clearing the treetops on Saturday. That's what we're going to be looking at. It's not going to look like your classic plains
Nope.
supercell, and they're going to be rain wrapped. Yeah, it's going to be like just a chunky
Ugh.
cloud. And
And that thing's moving straight at him.
and it's really, really hard to deal with that. You got all these trees, and it could be right on top of you.
Hmm.
This is why it's
Yeah,
going to be.
Mark, I want to point out how there's not really much left to right motion there. So if y'all are seeing this, that tornado, if you see where it is there in the center of to center left of the frame, it's not really moving right to left. It's just kind of getting bigger. That means it's heading straight at him. And these are going to be moving at 55, 60, sometimes 70 miles an hour. It's going to be on top of you within minutes
Not
if you
those
see it.
slow moving, going
Nope.
across the Kansas countryside, and it's just in an open field. These are going to be hauling, so people are going to have very little time
Yep.
to prepare. And this is a great shot. This is from the Her. This was initialized at the
That was
six.
the 6Z. Here, I'm
And
going to pull that up actually. Give me
yep,
1 second.
but you
If you'd let me share my screen, I can pull that up because this isn't a plug. I love Levi's site, but I use Pivotal Weather for severe weather stuff
sure,
only because Levi's stuff is typically more hurricane oriented as it should be. So we're going to do the 6Z run. That was today, 6Z. We're going to go ahead and focus in. I can actually go to the local and pull up Mississippi and Alabama. So did you see what forecast hour? Well, we'll just go through it. So this is starting today. So this is 1 a.m. So I want to point out here. So this is 1 o'clock Central, 1 a.m. Friday. So that was earlier today. We're going to go ahead and just go through time here. It'll let me. So this is approaching noon, 2, 3, 4 o'clock today. You start seeing some of this development here in southeastern Arkansas, northeastern Louisiana. And that's going to push off to the east. And we get that first round kind of firing around 1 o'clock. So remember, this is 1 o'clock in the morning here, and you have supercell. This looks like a supercell here. This one looks like it here, all the way down here through Mississippi. These will pull off to the east. And then now this is 8 a.m. tomorrow. This is 8 a.m. Saturday morning, and we're already seeing morning convection. And then 12 o'clock, 1
bam, look,
o'clock.
golly,
Look at
man,
that.
the
God.
model just
Wow.
look at those cities, and that's what I really like about Pivotal is it shows you the cities. And I mean, if you looked at it verbatim, Jackson gets a supercell right over it. If you just took this verbatim, which you can't, but it's a
But I want to
possibility.
focus in.
But yeah, look at that. Golly, man.
So that's a supercell. That's a supercell. That's a supercell. Like, I mean, it's insane. And the kinematics tomorrow are going to be perfect for these. It's one of those days where this print supercells. Kind of see here. I'm just kind of looking at our YouTube chat, which by the way, I am monitoring. If you guys have
Yeah, we're gonna
questions,
get
you can
to
throw it down in the chat.
yep.
Um,
Take your questions shortly.
but I kind of want to take this through the end. Again, this is the 6Z run.
Right,
And I mean, those kind of congeal. But even look, this is 5 o'clock Central tomorrow. You
right.
have look at these larger supercells south of
Big stuff.
Meridian. I mean, and they're just going to race off to the north and east.
Yep. They start knocking on the door of some bigger cities. University of
Yep.
Alabama there, Tuscaloosa. Tomorrow's a James Spann Day, that's for sure.
Yes.
And Josh Johnson down in Montgomery, I think he is.
Matt Laubon and Tupelo.
Yep.
These are some great, and I do want to mention the local meteorologists down here are legends. You have James Spann in Birmingham. You have um, Matt Laubon and Tupelo. Who did you mention, Mark? I didn't hear.
Josh Johnson, I believe he's in Montgomery.
Yep. I mean, these are these local Mets. They know their area. That's what they want to. That's what they do. Mark, do you want to share if you can pull up the NWS Jackson site for me? That's National Weather Service Jackson, Mississippi. I want to pull up their area forecast discussion from this morning, kind of go through it before we finish out here. So that's a good example. I always like their stuff. It's very insightful. That's going to be Central Mississippi, relatively. Yeah, there you go. If you scroll down to the bottom, oh, there it
There you
is.
go.
That's another way to do it.
Hmm.
So I really look at how they have up here. So this is 4:14 this morning, Central Time. A 1-2 punch of disturbances moving out of the east of the plains will bring an increasing threat for severe thunderstorms to our forecast area between this afternoon and tomorrow. So they're going to kind of go through each of these. Where is it at here? Some tornadoes could become strong and long tracked. Prime areas of concern will be especially along and southeast of the Natchez Trace corridor. And activity tonight may cause some adjustments in best timing or threat areas tomorrow, but residents across our entire area should anticipate the increasing threat for severe weather. We can go ahead and go down tonight, but I want to focus on tomorrow. So it talks about, look at that. The jet stream will nose overhead with 120 plus knot wind speeds out of the southwest. That's up in the atmosphere, but still, that is insane. I mean, we're talking, very high end values for tomorrow on all of our different parameters. And one of the things I'm not seeing that's kind of concerning, there's not a lot of talk of a fail mode,
Right.
Mark.
I
And
think
that's
the biggest
something,
fail mode could be if there's any leftover convection or cloud
right,
that doesn't allow the atmosphere to destabilize as much, that could be a saving grace. We'll just have to see. The more heating, the more
right,
sunshine, the worse it's going to be tomorrow. Clean.
right. So, and I think we're good to kind of pivot out of the discussion portion. We can go ahead and go into however you want to talk about the stuff for tomorrow with regards to the local meteorologist and the messaging.
Yep. Just reading a few things here from the folks tuned in. We appreciate it. Um, Couple things for you. Let me back this up. Yeah, there I am. Hi. Um, So those area forecast discussions, one of the things that I really like to do in my hurricane work is steer people to where you can learn more on your own. So the easiest thing to do is you go to weather.gov, you put in the zip code or the city name of the area you're interested in. You go to that landing page of the Weather Service, you scroll down to Area Forecast Discussion, AFD, and you can read that. You can read the Storm Prediction Center discussion. And then the beauty of it in this day and age, if there's any term that you don't understand, we use the word CAPE, an acronym, convective available potential energy, several times. And you might say, well, what is that? Or what is a sounding? Or what is this? Use a variety of different AI tools that are out there that have blended now in with search. Google has it. I don't remember what it's called. Is it Gemini or something? There's
I
Chat.
think they call it that now.
Twitter has the Grok, and they're pretty good. You can type that in, and you can have a conversation, and you can really learn about this stuff. I think the more we know, it is helpful, to try to understand the weather as best we can, and then you then become a source to help somebody else, and you can start talking about it, and then it just, through osmosis there blends in with everybody else in your community, that this wanting to know about this too because they're hearing about it. It's in our faces. It's on social media. It's on regular legacy media. And speaking of educating the public, and of course I am biased, but CJ,
Mhm.
I find myself sitting in front of Fox Weather just taking it in like I did in the 80s when the Weather Channel
Right.
started. And I just learned so much. And here I am, all these decades later. They are so good. And in fact, Greg Diamond just got promoted to, I can't remember the exact title, but the graphics and the animations and the things that you're seeing that are going to be coming out, they do such a great job. And that's important because the more we know, I think the better off we're going to be. And remember,
I
too,
agree.
Fox Weather is free. It's on YouTube. I don't know how accessible local TV stations have made themselves. I do not watch regular TV anymore. I just have it sitting on a couple channels downstairs off of the Samsung Plus. Fox Weather is one of them. And again, I know I'm biased because I work with them directly,
Right.
but oh my gosh, like their use of the technology, just keeping it simple without overcomplicating it, is an absolute testament to their mission. And that's important. And so, again, you hear something that they're talking about. You don't necessarily understand it off the top of your head. Look it up. The tools are out there. So, before we let you
I
guys
agree.
go, let's see. So, Span, Dylan, just trying to think if there's anybody else. I think the biggest thing here to take away from this for today and tomorrow is get in touch with people that live in the area that may not be in tune with the weather, and
Right.
just have a way to get up with them, call them, text them, have a neighbor check on them, whatever. And if you know that there's people that live in mobile homes that do not have any kind of substantial shelter if something were to come their way, it's just like a hurricane. You got to do the planning now. This is serious enough that CJ and I are taking time out of our day to talk about severe weather that really could impact people. Like this is the first big one in a long time that has the potential to change lives in a very bad way today and tomorrow. The fire weather, the severe thunderstorm aspect to this, absolutely. And then the fact that these will be ongoing tonight and then through tomorrow evening, it definitely does not have a good look. And then it goes into Sunday, which that's on day 3 of the SPC. We'll worry about that later. But the Carolinas could be looking at a threat as we get into Sunday. Finally,
Yep.
chasers. Look, I know that weather Twitter can be full of a lot of drama. And if you're in the community, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Amongst us in our close group, we often talk privately about like, wow, like this is like middle school sometimes or whatever. It's even worse. And this term gatekeeping, look, I get it, but anybody that's heading out there and you say, man, the 2011 outbreak is what motivated me or whatever. A lot of people that are heading down to the deep south for this stuff tomorrow were still in middle school or high school in 2011, and
Included.
they don't have experience with what could be.
No.
So, you know, I'm not the chaser police, but I am a dad, all right? And we don't want anybody hurt out there. And your streams and everything, they're valuable, they're interesting, they're important. They're important to you, or you wouldn't be doing it. But you got to come home to your family.
That's a good segue, Mark. And for those of you that are watching that live in these areas, I'm not saying to do this. I'm saying to do it safely, be smart. If you see something, if you see, a tornado on the ground and it's away from you and it's moving, take a picture and put it on Twitter, tag your local NWS office. That helps
Great
get
advice.
out the warning and that verifies their tornado warnings.
Yep.
That helps them to an extent. And that's where the general public, I'm not saying to go out and be like, the stereotypical Southerner. Look, Mark and I both live in the Southeast. We know how we are during severe weather. You don't want to be out there with when these things are moving. And Mark, if you want to share your screen, there's a really good key messages graphic that came up this morning from the SPC was around 2:30 in the morning. I think we can end on that in terms of showing graphics, um, because this really kind of ties it home. And you can follow these. your local National Weather Service offices. They live there. They live in these communities. They're a part of those communities. Um, and they're going to be able to disseminate that information. So
This,
there's this one for Friday, and then there's another one for Saturday if you go a little further back. Um, there it is, that one. I really like how this is set up. I really like that end, the safety actions. They will be moving rapidly, and it's important to take action when these warnings are issued. You want to take these warnings seriously this weekend and make sure that you're paying attention. And like Mark has said, let your family members or friends know. If you have an older lady or older gentleman down the street that lives in a mobile home, in this part of the country, that you could bring them in, you have a house that has a basement, offer that up. It's going to be a rough 24 to 48 hours, especially going into tomorrow, but we're going to get through it.
yeah, this is something we don't want to mess around with. This is serious.
No,
This has a high FAFO potential for people that ignore it, and whether it's the general public or chasers out there. We don't want you to find out. We want you to be safe. All right. Let's jump on YouTube as we wrap this up. See what we got. Any questions?
I
Um,
saw one from where the heck was it? It was Tyler Sherry. Can you say what is the chance of the day two can be a super outbreak? What is the chance, do you think? So I would say, and I want to tie in, there was another one by somebody whose tag was just war. I don't know who that is. It says, hearing a lot more concern in the voice of everyone talking about this one than I've heard in a while. I think that a lot of people, and Mark, you and I talked about this briefly last night when we were chatting about this, are comparing this to the super outbreak in the terms of, just the setup, the pattern, the upper level pattern's pretty similar. I never like when it comes to hurricanes, we never want to directly compare. We have analogs, right? But we never want to directly say it's going to be the exact same because all it takes is look at Matador. That was their super outbreak, and they had a single tornado on a day where there wasn't supposed to be any that went through their town. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. We want to talk what are the impacts? And the reality is, all you need is one tornado that stays on the ground for 80 miles and goes through a big city.
right.
And that's impactful. Look at Joplin is a great example of that. Parkersburg, Iowa is another one. Um, I really think that looking at it from that lens, I think this is the most serious threat the Southeast has faced in a while, probably since the 2023 outbreak that produced the Rolling Fork tornado.
So Killmonger had a great point. Turn your alerts on your phone. I know some people get annoyed.
Yes.
This is the weekend if you live down there. Turn those suckers on, all right? And Javier says, you don't have a normal weather radio. Most people have a smartphone these days, and they come with the EAS stuff, or just leave the TV on or something loud. I don't know. Like if you live in this area, you gotta take it upon yourself to be ready. It's just that simple, and pay attention to it. And when if it's looking like it's coming towards your area, uh, I saw Span talking about people getting helmets and whatever. But look, if you take a tornado direct hit to your house and it's coming for you, you just can't get out. Smallest room, get in the bathtub, cover yourself with as much as you can to protect your torso and your head from blunt force trauma. And we hope for the best because these are nothing to mess around with. These big earth scraping tornadoes in the deep south. That is why I'm not going because I don't mess with
Yep.
that. I
And
just
I said the same thing, Mark. I
scary.
told you I was considering until I saw the violence that's potentially there. I mean, you're not going to see these. And, speaking to the chasers as well, I was definitely one of the ones, like you said, Mark, I was in junior high when the super outbreak rolled through. I remember getting ready for my semi-formal dance my freshman year of high school and watching on the Weather Channel as that big Birmingham tornado went through,
Yep.
the eastern or the western suburbs of Birmingham. Something that I want to point out is that, especially if you do not have experience chasing in terrain, I grew up in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. You have, you're going to have hills there, you're going to have large pine trees. You're not going to see these. If you've never chased in Dixie Alley, do not start. this weekend. I implore you to just stay at home, watch it pan out. And again, it's not because of gatekeeping, it's because this can kill you
Yeah, absolutely. And it just trees come down in front of you, behind you.
and you're
Anyway,
stuck.
what can you say?
Hmm.
We'll hope for the best. Well, look, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll let you go. CJ and I could do this all day. It's fascinating to talk about, but it's also dangerous, and just lending our 2 cents in, a little bit of our expertise of hurricane experience and some severe weather experience. In a few weeks, we'll be headed out to do year 2 of studying large hail out in the nation's midsection and the high plains eventually, and maybe a tornado or two out there. But for now, the important thing is the very real potential of fire today in the southern plains, with the severe thunderstorm risk, the convective risk from there tonight through tomorrow. And we hope everybody stays safe, and that there's no loss of life. That would be tremendous. But, this is a dangerous situation, and we just want people aware. That's the bottom line. TJ, thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. We all do.
Absolutely, likewise.
All right, folks, I'm going to end it with that. Stop the share so I can get over here, kill my video first. I wish you guys a great weekend, and I will see you again on Monday, and we will know how this all turns out by then. Thanks for tuning in. See you Monday.